Modern automobile design is largely a product of mathematics. Before a physical prototype is ever built, algorithms and wind tunnels dictate the shape of the body, optimizing every curve to reduce the drag coefficient and maximize fuel efficiency. The pursuit of aerodynamic perfection leads to a natural homogenization. When computers solve for the path of least air resistance, the resulting vehicles begin to share a nearly identical silhouette. But in 1957, General Motors operated under a different set of priorities. They deliberately ignored these emerging ideas of efficiency, opting instead to bypass the constraints of practicality. The bold result of that decision was the 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Seville. This machine stood in contradiction to modern logic. It featured an elongated silhouette, hundreds of pounds of decorative chrome, and sharp wings rising directly out of the rear fenders. It carried an economic weight to match its physical mass. At roughly $7,286 new, it sat out of reach for the average consumer, priced as an exclusive tool for the wealthy. This raises a central question. Why would a post-war society funnel massive amounts of wealth into a heavy machine specifically designed to look like a spaceship? To understand the car, we have to look at the economy that produced it. For years during World War II, Americans lived through strict rationing, dealing with chronic shortages of rubber, steel, and gasoline. In the 1950s, those restrictions vanished. Industrial manufacturing capabilities expanded, and the United States entered a period of rapid economic growth. This influx of wealth triggered a migration into the suburbs. Millions of families moved into newly constructed neighborhoods, creating a massive demand for modern infrastructure. The consumer market reacted by filling these homes with modern appliances, televisions, and automobiles as standard features of middle-class life. The automobile became a primary medium for personal expression. The machine sitting in a driveway served as a public measurement of a family's financial standing and trajectory. To capture this market, Cadillac gave its designers something close to a blank canvas. They were encouraged to experiment and exaggerate, creating shapes that visualized prosperity without the usual pressure to be practical. The sheer weight and chrome of the Seville were not engineering oversights. They were deliberate aesthetic choices meant to mirror the scale of a buyer's success. The architect of this visual language was General Motors designer Harley Earl. Earl operated on the premise that a car should embody a dream of the future. He wanted to provide buyers with a machine that felt like a physical promise of what was coming next. In the late 1950s, that dream was defined by the space age and the progress of atomic energy. Earl's team looked to the sky for inspiration, studying the air intakes, swept wings, and exhaust ports of new experimental jet aircraft. They tracked the trajectories of high-altitude rockets and translated those aerodynamic silhouettes directly to the automotive drafting table. This aerospace influence produced the Seville's iconic tail fins. In a road-going car, these sharp rear wings offered no aerodynamic benefit. They did nothing to stabilize the vehicle or improve its handling. They were psychological symbols. The fins were molded into the steel to communicate the idea of speed and technological progress to the person behind the wheel. Driving this aerospace sculpture required significant power. Beneath the Seville's hood sat a 365 cubic inch Cadillac V8. It produced 325 horsepower, a necessary figure to move the thousands of pounds of steel, glass, and leather that made up the car's heavy body. The engine supported a specific philosophy of performance. Rather than focusing on agility or track precision, Cadillac prioritized a floating ride that isolated the driver from the road. The goal was to provide a surge of quiet power. When the driver pressed the accelerator, the car responded with an effortless force designed to make the owner feel completely in control. The 1957 Seville represents the limit of mid-century automotive styling, appearing just before the industry began a shift toward more restrained designs. Over the next decade, American priorities changed. Fuel economy became a concern, new safety regulations were introduced, and the market for massive land yachts began to shrink. Against the millions of standard sedans built for the public, Cadillac manufactured only 2,100 Seville hardtops for 1957. While ordinary cars rusted in junkyards, The few surviving Sevilles transitioned into historical artifacts, preserved in collector garages. The era of the giant tail fin is gone, replaced by the logic of wind tunnels and efficiency. Yet the Seville remains a vital record of the post-war mindset. We remember the 1957 Eldorado Seville because it captures a brief, theatrical window in time, when an optimistic America, quite literally,